Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us, and welcome to a webinar about Casetext and some of the new features that we've rolled out that I'm excited to tell you guys about. So my name is Pablo Arredondo. I'm Chief Legal Research Officer and co-founder here at Casetext. And my background is I graduated from law school in 2005, and I worked as a patent litigator in California and in New York. And basically, I was, representing leading tech companies like Apple and Google, and realizing that their technology was a lot better than the technology that we were using to represent them. And so, in 2010, I started putting my shoulder towards building better legal research technology. First, as a fellow at the Stanford Center for Legal Informatics, and since very early days with Casetext. Casetext is a startup that was created in 2013 and is now grown to over 35 folks. We're a mix of litigators, designers, and data scientists and engineers, all working together to create new and better legal research. All right, I should note that if you guys have any questions, you can feel free to chat them to me using the chat box down below. I'd be happy to answer them. Okay, so let's dig in. So what you're looking at here is your signed in Casetext homepage. It is deliberately a very simple, minimalist search bar. And as you might suspect, to get started with a keyword search, and as I'll mention in a bit, keyword search is just one type of search you can do with Casetext, but it's where I'm going to start because I want to focus right now on two new massive databases that we just launched, one called Black Letter Law and one called Holdings. So I'm going to do a search for double jeopardy. So when I do a search for double jeopardy, your first tab that you guys are very used to seeing, of course, is a list of case results. That's nothing new. You guys have seen that with Westlaw and Lexis. And a little bit later, I'll talk about some of the things we do that's a little bit different there. But for the moment, I'd like to start first with this new tab, the Holdings tab. So what you see here with this Holdings tab, we've assembled a database of concise case compilations. And I submit to you guys, it's actually the largest database of case summaries that's ever been assembled. We have over 2.3 million of these case summaries. And the way we were able to do this was not by hiring a huge number of editors to go manually create these. With tools like Westlaw and Lexis, you might see overviews of the cases that are written by folks and you don't know who they are. What we did instead was pull these concise case summaries directly from the case law itself. And we were able to do that by exploiting a very specific pattern, which is ubiquitous throughout the common law. And that pattern is the explanatory parenthetical. So those of you who are litigators have seen a million times where a judge will write, John versus Doe, left paren, holding that, yada, 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 right? Or finding that, yada, yada, yada. And so what we did is because the Blue Book dictates that there's a specific format for those parentheticals, they always follow directly after a reporter citation, and they almost always start with a present participle, like discussing or holding or distinguishing. We wrote what are called regular expressions, basically a fancy way of doing searching and matching to extract all of those parentheticals and then amass them into a database. And so what you're searching here, every single one of these summaries is written directly by a court and pulled directly from an explanatory parenthetical. And so there's really not a single topic that isn't going to have at least some summaries, right? This is so wide and it covers all areas of law. So whether you're searching maritime or antitrust, whatever you want to search, you should find multiple holdings on that topic. And you can also, of course, sometimes because there's so many, you might want to filter down and just look at certain jurisdictions. You can certainly do that as well. Here, I'll just say, let's say just the, I don't know, we'll just say Supreme Court. You can do that by clicking here and then saying see results, and it will pare it down to just the Supreme Court ones as well. And then to clear that, oh, sorry, clicked the wrong thing. We'll get to the case page in a moment. To clear those filters, you just click this X here. So the way you really use this is you can think about when you go to a treatise sometimes, you'll see in a treatise, the author will sometimes have footnotes or sections of the treatise, which are nothing but cases and their summaries on an area. And so it lets you really quickly scan a bunch of case holdings. This is essentially designed to be, if you will, a sort of celestial treatise that covers all topics from all jurisdictions. And that's how you can use this tool. All right, I'm going to turn now to the next massive database to talk about, which is the Black Letter Law database. So this database is also created directly by extracting patterns from the common law. But what's different about this one is, whereas the holdings database was created from parentheticals and was using a pattern that was dictated by the Blue Book, this database exploits another pattern that isn't required by the Blue Book. It's not something that lawyers or judges are required to use, but it just so happens that they sort of on their own organically started using these key phrases so much that you can actually compile a pretty amazing legal resource once you pay attention to them. And as you might guess from looking at these results, those main patterns are "it is well settled" and "it is well established." And I think occasionally you might find an "it is axiomatic" as well. And these patterns are, here's an "it is axiomatic" here at number 30. What's amazing about these patterns is that they are almost always followed directly by a concise articulation of a legal principle. And when you can use those sort of patterns directly, what you're able to find are unequivocal, unambiguous, emphatic articulations of key legal principles. And so we found that attorneys like to use these in a few ways. One is, let's say you're new to an area of law and you want to get a sense of sort of what's the scaffolding of this area of law? What are sort of the pillar, those key principles that sort of everything else is built upon? Certainly using our Black Letter Law database is a great way to sort of quickly orient yourself with that sort of structure. Another way is when you're looking for that fantastic quote for your brief, right? I think as litigators, whenever we want to quote a court, it's great if you can find your principle, but it's even better if you can find that principle articulated in such an emphatic way, right? So, why say, if you can quote, "it is an accused must suffer jeopardy before he can suffer double jeopardy," even better would be to have "it is well settled that such and such is the case." And so when you're writing your briefs, I think this is a great resource to use to see if you can bolster up your language and find an even better quote. And then even a third use, a little bit more subtle, but I think sometimes one of the things that can save you the most time with a database like this is sometimes you're looking for a principle that's so obvious that people don't mention it a lot. And so searching for it becomes really hard because the keyword searches you'd use take you to all the less obvious points, but not to the really obvious one. And in fact, the one I just quoted, number 6, the fact that you need jeopardy before you can have double jeopardy, right? It might seem like a no-brainer, but actually trying to go search and find out that exact quote, you could give yourself a lot of headaches. And so one partner at a law firm we showed this to said, "So you've created a treatise of all the obvious law," right? And I think that the truth is, yes, in fact. And in one way, that's what we've done. And you can find that it can save you a lot of headaches when you're trying to find something very specific. And so we have over 100,000 and growing of these well-settled principles, and you can access it anytime. Everything I show you with Casetext comes included with the Casetext package. We're not believers in having separate databases that cost more when you access them or charging you per search. We really believe that to do legal research right, you need to be able to try different keyword searches, experiment with different databases and resources, and do it all collectively. All right, so I'll just show you briefly some other key databases that we have as well. So on Westlaw and Lexis, their most expensive databases, I believe, are their briefs databases, seeing how other attorneys have argued a case or argued a legal issue. And so we've also created a database of over 50,000 and growing federal briefs. So one limitation is that these are all federal briefs. They're pulled directly from PACER. And we've also applied a filter of sorts, which is to say, we don't let just any brief in. We actually look at who the authors are, established law firms, solo practitioners with good reputations, leading nonprofits like the ACLU, the Center for Biological Diversity, and government agencies, right, are sort of brought in because we want you to be able to trust the various things that you're seeing. And so that's our briefs database. And then analyses. What we've done here is essentially taken the fantastic amount of work that attorneys do when they're trying to market themselves, right? So we've all seen, attorneys will write things and release them for free to sort of show everyone how on the ball they are, right? And these sort of marketing blurbs are a fantastic resource. And in fact, a recent surveys by librarians about research habits show that increasingly associates and attorneys were using Google to try to find exactly this sort of easily digestible, high-level stuff from trustworthy sources. And so what we did is we just integrated that. We partnered with over 200 law firms, and we pulled their material directly in. All right. So those are some of the databases that we've just added. And really, the holdings in the black letter law are designed to sort of work together, right? You can start with black letter law to understand the overall structure, and then dig into the holdings database to really kind of drill down and see how have folks applied these well-settled principles. And I showed it to you as a form of keyword searching, which is certainly one of the most common ways to access it. But those of you who aren't familiar with Casetext might not realize that we've also at Casetext created an entirely new way to do legal research. And that's currently available through our Cara functionality. So I'm switching here to our Cara webpage. It's just casetext.com/Cara/upload. And what Cara does is, instead of taking a keyword as a query, it lets you put in an entire brief, right, or an entire legal document. And so to show that here, I'm going to slide over and I'm going to open up an actual brief that was filed. We haven't modified this in any way. This is a brief from the, you guys may recall the litigation where Uber drivers sued Uber, claiming that they should be categorized not as independent contractors, but as employees. And as a result, they were owed, gas money and healthcare and all of these things. Understandably, Uber would prefer that that not be the case, right? And so this litigation happened in federal court. And what I'm scrolling through here is an actual summary judgment motion that was filed by Uber's attorneys, saying we don't need to go to a trial for this. This is sort of, should just be granted to us as a matter of law. And I'm going to scroll just a little bit to show you that this is a very typical brief, right? There's nothing changed to this. It's got your table of authorities, and then a bunch of text and argument, exactly like the kind of briefs that you as litigators both write and receive from opposing counsel on a daily or weekly basis. All right, so now we're going to begin the technical training portion of this. To use Cara, you take the PDF, you drag the PDF, and you drop it. And thus ends the technical training of how to use Cara. It really is that simple. And in a moment, I'm going to get a little bit under the hood to talk about what Cara is doing on the back end. But first, let's take a look at what Cara does when you give it a brief. Fundamentally, what Cara does is give you new cases that are not in the brief, but that are highly relevant to the brief. So again, it only returns cases here in the beginning that are not already cited in the brief. So it's a way to find case law that either your opposing counsel left out for some reason, even though it's very relevant, or case law that you might have overlooked while using traditional tools. So as we scroll through these results here, you'll see this first one, Cotter v. Lyft, is about whether or not Lyft drivers should be categorized as employees or independent contractors, and specifically whether or not that should go to a jury or be decided on summary adjudication. And again, this is a case not cited in the brief itself. And I submit, as litigators, I submit to you guys, it's pretty rare that we find cases that we feel are almost mathematically on point, right? Where like almost everything seems to be exactly aligned. And here with Cotter v. Lyft, you kind of feel that. You see that sort of direct on point result. As you scroll down, actually, this was the opinion the judge actually issued in response to that brief. So not surprisingly, that's quite relevant. And then as we scroll, what you're going to find is other cases where drivers were suing, claiming that they should be employees, not independent contractors. Here, I think it's bus drivers from the terminal. FedEx drivers earlier had made a couple attempts at this. Here's another case where drivers had done it. And so you sort of get the drift, right? These are cases that are not just about employment law in California, not just about the distinction between employees and independent contractors, but about that distinction in the context of drivers. All right, so how did we get here? What Cara does when you upload a brief, first and foremost, is it takes what I call the citation fingerprint of the brief, which is to say it says, what are all the cases cited in this brief, but also how much discussion is afforded to each. And that's done because if you mention a case in passing in a footnote, we don't want that to be given the same weight as cases that you discuss throughout the brief, right? So Cara is sensitive to which cases are really at heart of your brief versus which ones are sort of ancillary. We then use that citation fingerprint to run a type of Shepard's analysis. And I hesitate to say Shepard's because actually one of the critical things Cara does is go beyond what Shepard does. I say Shepard's just to sort of get in your minds what it, the sort of citation patterns, right? To sort of look at citation behavior. But to be specific about what Cara does that exceeds what you can do with Shepard's or KeyCite for that matter, Both Keysight and Shepard's look at direct citation path. They say what cases cite directly to the cases that you're looking at. Kara does that, but then Kara goes even further and looks for what you might call soft citation relationships. And what I mean by that is, let's say case A doesn't cite to case B directly, but you see case A and case B together a lot in the same paragraphs or in the same string cite even, right? You see that case A and case B, when judges are talking about case A, they're often talking about case B very close by. So of course, what's happening there is that a judge has read both cases and the judge knows that they're very related, even if they don't cite to each other directly. And that sort of wisdom of the judge, that sort of ability to harness that judge's intelligence is exploited by Kara. We sort of pay attention to that and we're able to do that. And then that's sort of how we do the citation graph part of it. Then, of course, not surprisingly, we also look at the text of your brief, right? Unlike your Boolean keywords, which will, your searches will contain maybe, 3, 4, 6 words, something like that. Your brief contains, tens of thousands of words. And so Kara naturally wants to pay attention to that. And so what we do there is something called latent semantic analysis. Essentially what that is there are these algorithms where if you pump a whole corpus through these algorithms, they will on their own look at the statistical distribution of the words and break the corpus into topics. So if I were to take all the New York Times issues ever put out over the last 30 years and feed it through these algorithms, they would say, look, there seems to be a topic that is football, touchdown, Super Bowl, end zone, right? Sort of all these football words. And there seems to be a topic that's Democrat, Republican, governor, voting, right? All these sort of political election words. And so that's exactly what we did. We took the common law, we took our corpus of over 7 million judicial opinions, including all 50 states and district court opinions, both published and unpublished, and fed it through these algorithms. And then they, on their own, looked at the statistical distribution to create topics. And what's critical here is that those topics aren't just legal topics, they're also factual topics. And so it's not an accident that these top cases are not just about the legal issues, but also about the same factual issues. That's because somewhere on our back end, not only does Kara have a topic for employment law, for independent contractor law, but there's a topic that's something like chauffeur, limousine, driver, right? All these sort of words related to being a driver or driving for a living. And the way that Kara sorts its results is it looks at your brief and then it looks at these results and it says, what are the ones that are best fit for the brief? And I think one of the big take-home lessons when you think about Casetext, and one of the things that we're really trying to do to improve the entire way that legal research is done, is to understand that when you're litigating, you have a specific client who has specific factual concerns and nuances. And any system that just gives you a one-size-fits-all ranking, that tries to do the same ranking for a tort lawyer in Virginia that they give a patent lawyer in California, is going to both be over and under inclusive. It's going to return things you don't want, it's going to exclude things you do want, and it's going to not be nearly as intuitive as a legal research system that actually pays attention to what's going on. And so that's one of the revolutions that Casetext is bringing, is contextual legal research that's actually cognizant of the exact case you're working on. And we're able to do that by harnessing the huge amount of information that's encoded in litigation materials like your briefs or your complaints and things like that. Note, however, that if you want, you can also combine the power of traditional keyword with the power of contextual Kara search. And in fact, Kara will automatically suggest certain keywords to use as filters based on looking at your brief and at the results and saying, okay, what's a good one to use? But should you say, I'm only interested in the damages issues, you can add a keyword without sacrificing the huge amount of context that you've gotten from uploading your brief and from providing that context. And then as jurisdictions go, you'll find that Kara will tend to organically return the jurisdictions you care about. So for instance, this brief was filed in federal court as a class action, but obviously there's a lot of underlying California state law. Kara organically, before you even apply any filters, will return a mix of relevant federal law and California state law. However, should you wish to filter down to any jurisdictions, you certainly can, and Kara will apply a sort of hard filter. And note that just as Kara will return cases that are not in the brief, it'll also go and find holdings for cases that aren't in the brief. So you can sort of search from that vantage point and see just the holdings of these cases if you want to scan more quickly, and any sort of well-settled black letter law that you want to look for, right? So in this case, there's one that it finds especially relevant. If you want to go beyond and see all of the ones that it suggests, you can click more and you'll see it. And likewise for briefs and for analyses, right? So basically all of the content that you can access through keyword search, you can also access through Kara, and Kara will sort of automatically bring it to you. And then this last tab, so this is one that you guys, our users, asked for, and this is the actual cases that are in the brief. Certainly as legal informatics, I find it snazzier to be able to find the stuff that's not in the brief. But we aim to please, and a lot of folks were like, let me have a searchable list of the cases in my brief. And so not only is this it's sort of like a super table of authorities, because you have the list, but you can also filter the list, and we've annotated the list with concise summaries of the case holdings where we have them. So that's a sort of another way that you can go about doing it. All right. So clicking on the case page, when you actually go into a case page on Casetext, you'll find, not surprisingly, given the name of our company, that we give you the text of the case in full. That's there. And that includes copy with cite if you want to export something. You can copy with cite in the direct format, which is the quote followed by the cite, but you can also copy directly into a parenthetical format, which is the cite followed by a paren and then the quoted language in quotes after that. When I was an associate, I used to spend a lot of time converting one into the other, so we wanted to just give you the ability to export in either format. On your left, you'll see this bar with varying shades of blue. This is our heat map. Essentially, the darker the blue, the more that page has been cited. So it's a way to quickly scan down and find where the action is, right? As lawyers will know, cases are often very long, and only certain fragments of it are the stuff that has the sort of legally functional language that you really want to focus in on sometimes, especially when you're sort of assessing, is this a case I want to explore further? And this heat map lets you sort of very quickly do that. At the top, you'll find summaries from subsequent cases. So with the holdings database, you're searching a database of nothing but these holdings. But when you're in the full text of a case, what we'll do is we'll give you the summaries for this specific case up top, right? So this is akin to the summaries that your Westlaw or Lexis editors will write for you. Only for ours, they're written by the Northern District of California. I guess these are, a court in New Jersey. So ours are all written by judges, and you can go find the source for the summary of Alexander if you want. I won't spend too much time on key passages just because this is largely duplicative of Lexis headnotes stuff that you guys will know. But if you want, you can focus in on specific language and sort of just look there. On your right, you'll see both the insights. These are the law firm analyses that I mentioned before. So where a lawyer has written sort of a blurb, an essay, I still always struggle with what exactly to call these things, but basically written analysis of this case, you can then go and access it. So here, Quinn Emanuel has written some stuff about the case in this FedEx driver situation. And then, of course, give me a moment. We're going back to our brief results. Then you can also look at the citing cases as well. I'll take a second to show you that down here on the bottom, and then you can filter both citing cases and insights by keywords. So in sum, what we're trying to do now is create a tool that both leverages all the power of artificial intelligence, but also realizes that there are some things that artificial intelligence can't do. And that's where, if you will, sort of judicial intelligence is a much better thing to rely on. So in other words, you can use artificial intelligence to, in seconds, scan an entire brief and map out the citation patterns, both direct and indirect, and apply all this fancy natural language processing and topic modeling to kind of bring things out. But there's no AI that's going to concisely summarize a case holding, right? That just doesn't exist to our knowledge. And so there, what we do is we bring in the work of the judges. And it's essentially as though we've turned the entire judiciary into our editorial board, right? Just by leveraging those patterns that let us reliably pull out the useful things that they've done. And so, and again, I won't belabor this stuff, but you have your basic, save bookmarking, PDF and things like that. Those are all sort of, very standard, not exciting features. So I won't take up your time with them. So that is our database. We are uploading every day new case law. As I mentioned, we're comprehensive across all 50 states. We have federal appellate, Supreme Court, and district court going all the way back, published and unpublished going back to the 50s. And then we have the US Code and state statutes for New York, New Jersey, Delaware, and California. and Florida, and we'll be adding more statutes on a rolling basis. We also have the Code of Federal Regulations. And so those are the sort of major features with Casetext, and I encourage you all to give them a try, whether using us directly for keyword search, or if you have a brief you're working on, you can also use that. And actually, that's something important that I forgot to mention. So when we first designed Kara, it was so that you could take your opponent's brief, drag and drop it, and immediately have, in seconds, cases to rebut the brief with. As soon as we released it, though, attorneys said, well, wait a minute, what about my draft? I don't want to submit a draft to the judge without, if I'm missing cases. So how could I use Kara to double check my own work product? And so two things had to happen for that to be the case. First, we had to enable you to drag and drop Word documents, which we did. And then secondly, now that we were dealing with attorney work product, we really had to up our security. And our tool has been vetted by AmLaw 20 security reviews, which are, let me tell you, they're not fun, but at the other side of them, you're very confident that you have sort of bank level security that you can use. The briefs that you upload are destroyed immediately. We don't keep them in any way. All we do is take our sort of statistical snapshot of them, and then that's what's used to generate the report. So we take it very seriously, the security aspects of it. And then one more note on the judiciary. We actually made this freely available to judges as well, and we've been quite happy with how judges have adopted it. We did that both out of the goodness of our hearts and to instill terror in litigators across the country that their judge will be drafting things through Kara, and they better do it too or they'll be ambushed. So both out of the goodness of our hearts and out of a Machiavellian pursuit of revenue, we have made this completely free for judges, and it's being used in both federal and state courts across the country. Some are even blogging about it, which amazed us that judges have blogs that they talk about technology on, but they do. So that is where we're at right now. We are committed to continuing to evolve this tool, and that's where feedback from folks like you is so useful and really essential. And so I encourage you guys to try it. And one of the joys of a startup is that your email address is just your name and then the company. So I am Pablo at Casetext as a person, that's where I work, but I'm also Pablo at casetext.com is my email address. And so if after trying it you have any questions or suggestions, criticisms, whatever it is, please don't hesitate to reach out. We'd love to hear from you. All right, well, I've thrown a lot at you guys. You're all on mute, so I have no idea if this is being well received or not. I hope it is. Why don't I stop here and give you guys a few seconds if you'd like to ask any questions. Again, you should use the chat system down below to type a message. And if I'm happy to answer them. If we don't hear from any questions, I think we will wrap it up. But again, I'm always available if you have further questions later. All right. Alternatively, I guess there's a little raise your hand button you can hit here. I'm learning this new UI. If you hit your hand icon, it will be as though you virtually raised your hand in the class. It doesn't tell me how emphatically you're raising your hand, so I'll assume you did it very coolly. All right. All right, then. Well, if there's no questions, then I think we'll stop here. We designed these tools to be hopefully easy to explain and very easy to grasp the value. And so, I think we might have a question here. Go to questions pane. Good job, really interesting. Okay, that's a compliment, but I'm going to take it. Do you destroy the statistical maps of the uploaded briefs? Great question. James, the way that works is when you drag and drop a brief into Kara, what's created is, here, let me go to Kara real quick. We create a specific URL that's unique to the report that you yourself generated. And that's why there's this menacing link right here that has this very menacing alphanumeric code. That lives on. Only those who have that link can access this report. So that enables you to be able to share it with folks if you want to, but nobody else can just sort of, type in casetext.com/your name and sort of access it, right? So I think the answer to your question is the statistical map in the form of the results page does live on, but it lives on in a way that's protected by a hash to minimize anybody being able to access it. And let me know if that doesn't answer your question. That does. Thank you. All right. So cool. All right, you guys. Well, thank you all for attending, and good luck researching. I hope I wish you all granted motions when you're moving and denied motions when you're opposing. And I hope that Casetext can help be a part of that success.